The Apostle Paul gives us a glimpse of heaven as a relief from the things that we may suffer here below. In 2 Corinthians chapter 4, he says we need to look to eternal things instead. Good morning, I'm Pastor Ernie Lewis of the Blue Point Church in Sisseton, Illinois, with your thoughts for Wednesday. As many Christians were facing persecution during the New Testament days, Paul writes to comfort these in Corinth, and he even gives them the promises of heaven. He says in 2 Corinthians chapter 5 and verse 1, "For we know that if our earthly house, this tent, is destroyed, we have a building from God, a house not made with hands, but eternal in the heavens." Now, Paul first talks about the struggles that we face and those that they were facing in Corinth, even in other areas. In chapter 4 and verse 16, he said, "Our outward man is perishing, yet the inward man is being renewed day by day." He's comparing our physical struggles with our spiritual soul. We recognize that our outward man is perishing. We know the daily headaches and the heartaches that it brings. Solomon even reminds us of the body's deterioration in Ecclesiastes chapter 12, when he uses phrases like, "When the keepers of the house shall tremble, and the strong men shall bow down, the grinders shall cease because they are few, and those that look out of the windows will be darkened." We have experienced some of the signs of aging, and perhaps Solomon had experienced them himself. So Paul reminds us that even though the outward man is perishing, our inward man, our spiritual being, is being renewed day by day. You realize the closer we get to actually leaving this earth behind, the more important it is that we strengthen our relationship with God, that we make those preparations for heaven. So he says, we know that if our earthly house, this tent, is destroyed, and certainly it will be, even though people try every secret to the fountain of youth, one day this decaying body will succumb to the elements and will die. He even refers to this earthly body as a tent. Have you ever tried to live in a tent for very long? You know, one overnight campout is pretty well enough for me. A tent is fragile. It may be blown away in the wind. It will certainly leak if it rains every time. They're uncomfortable, and that's what he says our body is like. So why would we want to prolong our stay in such a temporary kind of housing? The promise is when this tent is destroyed or just decays away, we have a building from God. We know he is the master contractor. And Jesus even said, "I'm going to prepare a place for you." This will be a house not made with hands. You know, our earthly structures oftentimes have problems, maybe with faulty materials or poor contractors, terrible construction, but not this house. This is a house not made with hands, eternal in the heavens. There is your promise of eternity in heaven. That's why Paul says, "I am well pleased rather to be absent from this body and to be present with the Lord." He says that in chapter 5 and verse 8. "For we walk by faith," he said, "not by sight." I hope you're preparing for that new address, that new house not built with hands, that new neighbors, and even the presence of God where we will spend eternity.